Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is The Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. Written between 1308 and 1320, The Divine Comedy stands as one of the most monumental works in world literature. Composed by the Italian poet Dante Alighieri, this epic poem not only encapsulates the medieval view of the afterlife, but also paints a powerful allegorical picture of the human soul's journey toward redemption. Divided into 3 sections, Inferno, Hell, Purgatorio, Purgatory, and Paradiso, Paradise, it takes readers through a journey that is both deeply personal and universally significant. The story follows Dante, the narrator and protagonist, as he ventures through these 3 realms. Guided first by the ancient Roman poet Virgil through hell and purgatory, and later by his beloved Beatrice through heaven, Dante's journey is as much about spiritual awakening as it is about understanding the consequences of sin and the transformative power of divine grace. In The Divine Comedy, Dante explores questions of morality, justice, and faith, posing intricate reflections on the nature of human existence, divine judgment, and the eternal struggle between good and evil. The Divine Comedy is not just a poem. It is a theological, philosophical, and political masterpiece, one that offers a reflection on the culture and society of Dante's time, while also offering profound insights into timeless questions of faith and human suffering. Its characters, drawn from history, mythology, and Dante's contemporary world, represent a spectrum of human experiences, from the virtuous to the damned, illustrating both the consequences of moral choices and the possibility of salvation. What makes Dante's work stand out is its intricately crafted symbolism and structure. With its vivid imagery, rich allegory, and keen attention to theological detail, The Divine Comedy has left a lasting impact on Western thought and literature, influencing countless writers, philosophers, and artists for centuries. The work's depth, however, often invites questions. What is the nature of Dante's vision of the afterlife? Why are certain individuals placed in specific realms? And how does Dante portray the idea of divine justice? And how do we interpret Dante's own personal journey through these realms? As we delve into this summary, we will follow Dante's spiritual journey, exploring the dramatic landscapes of hell, purgatory, and heaven. We will meet the souls that inhabit these realms, witnessing their stories of suffering, redemption, and divine grace. Through it all, we will uncover Dante's message that the road to salvation is fraught with challenges, but it is always within reach for those who seek redemption. Dante's journey begins on the evening of his 35th year, lost in a dark forest that symbolizes his spiritual and moral confusion. This moment of disorientation is not just physical, but represents the turmoil within his soul. Dante is midway upon the journey of our life, and he finds himself in a place where he is far from the straight and narrow path of righteousness. The forest, shrouded in mystery and danger, reflects the chaos that has overtaken his life, his personal doubts, sin, and the world's corruption. As Dante struggles to find his way, he encounters a figure from classical literature, Virgil, the great Roman poet. Virgil, sent by Beatrice, Dante's beloved and spiritual muse, comes to guide him through hell, purgatory, and heaven. Virgil represents human reason, the guiding force of intellect, and he becomes Dante's first guide through the dark labyrinth of the afterlife. He explains to Dante that the only way to emerge from the forest is to traverse the three realms of the dead, beginning with hell, the deepest and darkest of all. Dante, though initially hesitant and fearful, follows Virgil's lead, and they begin their descent into hell. The gates of hell are inscribed with a chilling warning: "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." The words echo with the finality and hopelessness that the damned will face for eternity. Upon crossing this threshold, Dante witnesses the souls of those who have been condemned to hell for their sins. Hell, as depicted by Dante, is not a fiery abyss of eternal torment in the conventional sense, but a vast, complex realm divided into 9 circles, each reserved for different types of sinners. The architecture and geography of hell reflect the severity and nature of the sins committed in life. In the first circle, Dante encounters the souls of the virtuous pagans, those who lived before the advent of Christianity and thus could not be saved. These souls, though not damned, exist in a state of eternal longing for God's presence. Among them are famous figures like the philosopher Aristotle, the poet Homer, and Julius Caesar. Their existence in the first circle is not one of torment, but of sorrow, an endless yearning for the divine that they can never attain. Dante expresses sympathy for them, recognizing the profound tragedy of their plight. The journey continues deeper, and as Dante and Virgil move to the second circle, the weight of the suffering intensifies. Here, in the second circle of hell, Dante encounters the souls of the lustful, those who gave in to the passions of the flesh during their lives. These souls are tossed about by an eternal storm, a violent wind that mirrors their uncontrolled desires on earth. Among these souls, Dante meets the tragic lovers Francesca da Rimini and Paolo Malatesta, whose story moves him deeply. Their love was forbidden, and they both died in each other's arms, punished for their adultery. As Francesca recounts her story, she speaks of the overwhelming power of love and how it led them both astray. Her sorrowful tale of passion, betrayal, and eternal punishment stirs a profound empathy within Dante. Yet, this compassion does not prevent him from understanding that justice demands their suffering. The emotional complexity of this encounter forces Dante, and by extension, the reader, to confront the question of how love and sin intertwine in the human experience. The deeper Dante and Virgil descend, the more grotesque and terrifying the punishments become. In the third circle, they meet the gluttonous, those who overindulged in food, drink, and sensual pleasures during their lives. These souls are condemned to lie in a vile, slushy, filthy mire, constantly bombarded by icy rain, freezing cold, and filth. Cerberus, the three-headed dog, guards this circle, symbolizing the insatiable hunger that drove these sinners to their doom. The gluttonous are deprived of any pleasure, forced to endure eternal deprivation. The vivid imagery of this circle reinforces Dante's message that excessive indulgence in earthly pleasures comes at a steep price. In this section, Dante's understanding of divine justice grows sharper, revealing his belief that sin, regardless of its form, brings with it a corresponding punishment. Dante's empathy for the damned grows as he encounters more souls, each one revealing a new layer of the moral fabric that underpins the universe of Inferno. As Dante progresses, he comes to recognize the crucial role of choice in determining the fate of the soul. Each sinner, whether lustful, gluttonous, or otherwise, made a conscious decision to prioritize their desires over the moral and spiritual order of the universe. These choices, now irreversible, shape their eternal punishment. Throughout these early stages of the journey, Dante is both horrified and enlightened by the suffering he witnesses. Virgil, ever calm and rational, continues to explain the significance of these punishments, showing Dante that each one is a reflection of the sin committed on earth, a form of divine retribution that balances the scales of cosmic justice. As they journey through hell, Dante slowly begins to understand that there is no arbitrary suffering in the afterlife, no punishment without reason. Each soul's torment is a direct consequence of the choices they made while alive. By the time Dante and Virgil reach the deeper circles, the moral weight of the sins becomes increasingly severe. The sins of violence and fraud, which take root in human corruption, are punished with even more grotesque and terrifying visions. Yet, as the journey deepens, Dante's understanding of divine justice begins to evolve. He sees that the sins that once seemed petty or understandable, such as love or gluttony, lead to deep and irreversible suffering because of the way they distort the soul and the human relationship with the divine. Through it all, Dante's personal journey unfolds alongside his moral and spiritual awakening. Each encounter, each punishment, teaches him something crucial about human nature, divine law, and the pursuit of redemption. With Virgil's guidance, he slowly begins to unravel the tangled web of sin, suffering, and salvation that will guide him to a deeper understanding of the universe, and ultimately of himself. As Dante and Virgil move further down into hell, the nature of the sins and their corresponding punishments grow more intense, more grotesque. The emotional weight of the journey is increasingly difficult for Dante to bear, and each encounter forces him to wrestle with his own beliefs and moral compass. They descend from the realm of the lustful and gluttonous to the even darker and more damning circles, where the sins are rooted in the darker aspects of human nature: violence, fraud, and betrayal. The further Dante and Virgil travel, the more horrifying the suffering becomes, and it is here, in the deeper layers of hell, that Dante's evolving understanding of divine justice becomes clearer. In the seventh circle, Dante and Virgil encounter the souls of those who have taken the lives of others in anger or out of malice. The circle is divided into 3 rings, each reserved for different forms of violence: those who committed violence against others, those who committed violence against themselves, and those who committed violence against God and nature. Each ring is starkly different in its depiction of punishment. And as Dante moves from one to the next, he is struck by the horrific imagery of those who are trapped in eternal suffering as a result of their violent actions. The first ring contains those who have killed others, and these souls are condemned to an endless river of boiling blood. They are submerged in this river, each according to the degree of violence they inflicted in life. The river is patrolled by centaurs, who shoot arrows at the sinners whenever they attempt to rise from the boiling blood, forcing them to sink deeper into the searing water. Among these violent souls, Dante encounters figures from history, such as Alexander the Great and the tyrant Attila the Hun. Their punishment reflects the depth of their crimes and the unrelenting consequences of taking a life. The second ring of the seventh circle is reserved for those who have committed suicide, those who ended their own lives in a desperate act of violence against themselves. These souls are transformed into twisted, gnarled trees, their forms twisted and scarred by their own self-inflicted wounds. The trees are constantly torn apart by harpies, monstrous bird-like creatures that feast on their leaves, a symbol of the pain and suffering that suicide brings, not only to the individual, but also to the world. The souls trapped within these trees are unable to speak, only able to groan in agony. Dante is horrified by the sight, and yet, as he moves among them, he sees that they are not entirely beyond redemption. The twisted nature of their punishment reflects the way their lives were consumed by despair and self-destruction. The third ring of the seventh circle is the most disturbing, reserved for those who have committed blasphemy and violence against God. These souls are trapped in a desolate, fiery desert, where flames fall from the sky, scorching them as they lie upon the ground. The rain of fire symbolizes divine wrath, burning away their souls and leaving them to suffer in eternal agony. The scene is one of profound desolation, a fitting punishment for those who have turned away from God in defiance of his divine authority. Dante encounters figures who represent this sin, including those who have blasphemed against the Holy Trinity or committed sacrilege in life. Their punishment is fitting, an eternal reminder that violence against the divine is an offense that carries severe consequences. As Dante moves through each of these circles, his sense of horror deepens. He realizes that the acts of violence that so often seem trivial or justifiable in life are, in fact, grave offenses that tear at the fabric of divine order. Violence, whether directed at others, oneself, or even the divine, distorts the soul and distances it from salvation. The suffering Dante witnesses is not just physical, it is spiritual, a reflection of the deep scars left by violence. Each soul in hell is marked by their sin, and their punishment reflects the degree to which they deviated from the divine path. The journey continues as Dante and Virgil move into the eighth circle, a place reserved for the fraudulent, those who used deceit, trickery, and manipulation to achieve their goals at the expense of others. This circle is divided into 10 bulges, or ditches, each one reserved for a different form of fraud. Here, Dante encounters sinners who have been condemned for various forms of deceit: panders, seducers, hypocrites, thieves, and false counselors, to name a few. Each balja is a twisted reflection of the crime committed, and the punishment is designed to mirror the nature of the sin. In the first balja, Dante witnesses the fate of the pimps and seducers, who are whipped and lashed by demons as they are forced to march in endless lines. Their punishment is both physical and psychological, as they are forced to endure the same humiliation and abuse that they inflicted upon others in life. Dante's encounters with these figures are tinged with both disgust and pity, as he recognizes that their sins were motivated by a deep, insatiable desire for power and control over others. In the next balja, Dante finds the hypocrites, those who outwardly appeared righteous, but inwardly were corrupt. These souls are forced to walk eternally in a circle, weighed down by heavy leaden cloaks that represent the false appearances they projected during their lives. The cloaks are gilded on the outside, but inside they are crushingly heavy, symbolizing the deceit that these souls carried with them throughout their lives. Dante is deeply moved by their suffering, yet he understands that the hypocrisy they practiced in life has led them to this eternal torment. Each Balja introduces Dante to a new form of deceit, and the further they move through the eighth circle, the more complex the moral dilemmas become. Dante's encounters with these fraudulent souls force him to confront the many ways in which human beings can twist truth and manipulate others for personal gain. The sins of fraud are particularly disturbing to Dante because they are sins of the intellect, sins of thought and intention, not just of action. This intellectual deception, he realizes, is far more dangerous than physical violence because it corrodes the soul from within, eroding trust and integrity in the human community. The depth of the suffering that Dante witnesses in the eighth circle makes clear the severity of these sins. The souls trapped in these Baljas are condemned to suffer because they violated the most fundamental moral laws of human interaction: honesty, integrity, and trust. In Dante's eyes, fraud is the ultimate betrayal, a sin that undermines the very foundations of human society. Through these harrowing encounters, Dante begins to comprehend the profound nature of divine justice. Each soul's punishment reflects not just the nature of their sin, but the way their actions have corrupted the divine order. Hell, in Dante's eyes, is a place of eternal consequence, where the choices made in life determine one's fate in the afterlife. It is a place where justice reigns supreme, unyielding and inescapable, no matter how great or small the sin may seem. As Dante and Virgil continue their descent, the landscape of hell becomes even more grim and complex. They now enter the final sections of the eighth circle of hell, where the sins of fraud are further broken down into more specific and often more insidious categories. Each Balja in this circle reveals a different aspect of human deception, and the punishments of those trapped here become increasingly tailored to the nature of their deceit. As they move through these layers, Dante's growing understanding of divine justice continues to evolve, becoming more nuanced with each soul he encounters. The third Balja of the eighth circle is dedicated to those who have committed simony, those who have sold ecclesiastical office or spiritual privileges for personal gain. These sinners, who have used the sacred and holy for corrupt purposes, are condemned to a brutal and fitting punishment. Dante sees these souls buried headfirst in holes that resemble baptismal fonts, their feet ablaze and tormented by the flames that lick at them. The flames represent the false light of their greed for power, while the burial of their heads reflects their deliberate turning away from spiritual truth. These souls' hypocrisy is not just confined to their personal gain. They have defiled the sacred institution of the church itself, trading divine grace for earthly riches and prestige. Among these souls, Dante recognizes some figures from history, priests, bishops, and even popes who have sold their influence for money. One of the most notable is Pope Nicholas Roman III, who is buried up to his waist with his feet burning in the flames. Nicholas, recognizing Dante as a fellow Florentine, calls out to him and warns that his own successor, Pope Boniface Roman VIII, will will soon join him in hell, a sign of how deeply corruption has infiltrated the church. Dante, unsettled but resolute, listens carefully to the words of the damned, understanding that their eternal suffering is a direct consequence of their greed and abuse of power. The next Balja, the fourth of the eighth circle, is reserved for those who have committed sorcery, astrology, and other forms of deceptive practices that manipulate the truth. These are the false prophets, those who claim to possess divine insight, leading people astray with their fraudulent predictions and promises. Their punishment is symbolic and fitting. They are forced to walk forever with their heads twisted backward, unable to look forward or see where they are going. This torment reflects the nature of their deception. By pretending to know the future or manipulate the forces of the divine, they have turned their backs on the truth. The twist of their heads symbolizes the disorienting effect of their lies, as they are eternally trapped in a state of confusion and blindness. Among the souls in this Balja, Dante meets the famous sorcerer and astrologer, Virgil, who is a character from Greek mythology known for his ability to see the future. Virgil, now in his eternal punishment, explains to Dante that those who attempt to control the future or interfere with divine providence are condemned to eternal confusion. By claiming knowledge that belongs only to God, these souls have perverted the divine order and thus face this twisted and painful punishment. Dante, horrified by the disjointed and unnatural way in which these souls move, reflects on the arrogance and danger of trying to surpass the limitations of human knowledge. The next Balja is reserved for the hypocrites, the individuals who, while outwardly appearing virtuous, are inwardly corrupt and dishonest. These souls are forced to walk under heavy leaden cloaks that weigh them down, their movements slow and agonizing as they move in circles around the Balja. The cloaks are gilded on the outside, a facade of holiness, but they are unbearably heavy and suffocating inside, symbolizing the immense burden of their deceit. Dante is deeply disturbed by the sight of these souls, who appear to be trapped in an endless loop of suffering. They carry the weight of their false appearances forever, unable to shed the heavy burden of their lies. These hypocrites are often figures of great stature, church leaders, politicians, and others who hold positions of power and influence, who use their roles to deceive others and perpetuate their false image of righteousness. As Dante watches the hypocrites struggle beneath their cloaks, he reflects on the damage that hypocrisy causes in society. By deceiving others with false piety, these sinners have created a world where trust is betrayed and integrity is lost. Their punishment is a fitting one, as it forces them to wear their deceit for all eternity, unable to escape the weight of their own lies. Dante begins to understand that true virtue cannot be faked or worn as a mask. Authenticity is the only path to salvation. The sixth Balja of the eighth circle is dedicated to the thieves. These souls, who stole both material possessions and ideas, are punished by being chased and bitten by serpents, their bodies often transforming and reshaping in unnatural ways. Their punishment reflects the nature of theft. It is a violation not just of physical property, but of the trust and relationships that bind society together. The serpents, which represent the poison of theft and betrayal, continuously torment these souls, symbolizing the deep and lasting damage that their actions have caused. One particularly striking image in this Balja is that of a thief who is transformed into a snake. The snake, which represents the deceptive and dangerous nature of theft, coils around the sinner's body, while the person's original form writhes in agony. This grotesque transformation reflects the way in which theft degrades the soul, turning it into something base and monstrous. Dante, disturbed by the sight, reflects on the fact that theft is not just a material crime. It is a violation of the fundamental respect that one should have for others. Through this encounter, he understands that stealing, whether it is physical property or intellectual ideas, robs not only the individual but the greater society as well. The seventh Balja introduces Dante to the fraudulent counselors, those who use their intellect and position to deceive others for personal gain. These souls are cloaked in flames, which represent the burning passion for personal advancement that motivated their deceptive actions. As Dante observes these tormented souls, he is struck by the realization that fraud is a particularly insidious sin because it involves the betrayal of trust and the manipulation of others for selfish purposes. The counselor's punishment reflects the fire that burned within them, a fire that now consumes them for all eternity. Dante is filled with disgust at the thought of how these souls used their wisdom and cunning for destructive ends, furthering the moral decay of society through their deception. Dante's encounters in the eighth circle force him to confront the many facets of human dishonesty and manipulation. With each new Balja, he is confronted with the consequences of falsehoods and deceit, each one more disturbing and thought-provoking than the last. As he witnesses the suffering of those who have betrayed the truth, he is forced to grapple with the destructive power of fraud and the far-reaching consequences it has on the fabric of human society. Through these experiences, Dante begins to understand that the sin of fraud is not only a personal failing, it is a societal one, a sin that infects the very foundations of trust and honesty. As Dante and Virgil descend further into hell, the scene becomes more chaotic, a relentless spiral into the darkest recesses of human sin. They now enter the ninth circle, the deepest and most harrowing part of hell, where the very fabric of the universe seems to tremble under the weight of the worst of sins, those who have betrayed others. This final circle is reserved for the treacherous, and its suffering is far worse than anything Dante has encountered up until now. It is a place where the distinctions between sin and consequence blur, where betrayal becomes the central crime that damnation cannot undo. The first and most striking feature of the ninth circle is its icy nature. Unlike the fire and heat of the previous circles, where flames symbolize the suffering of those consumed by their desires, this final part of hell is frozen, a landscape of stark and unyielding cold. The coldness here represents the emotional and spiritual numbness of betrayal, the total absence of warmth or compassion in the hearts of those who commit the most grievous of sins. The circle is divided into 4 concentric zones, each one representing a different type of treachery. And as Dante and Virgil make their way deeper, they encounter the souls of traitors to different causes, traitors to kin, to country, to guests, and finally, to their benefactors. The first zone they encounter is for those who have betrayed their own family members. These souls are trapped in a frozen lake, their bodies completely encased in ice. The more treacherous their actions, the deeper they are buried within the ice, their heads and faces contorted in expressions of agony and regret. Dante is horrified by the sight, as these souls seem completely immobilized, unable to move or even speak. The cold here is suffocating, not merely a physical torment, but a reflection of the utter alienation and severance from love and familial bonds that comes with such betrayal. These souls have turned on the very ties that should have protected them, their kin. And now, they endure the chilling isolation of that severed connection. Among the souls in this part of hell, Dante recognizes several notable figures, including those who have committed acts of fratricide or have betrayed their closest relatives for power or wealth. These individuals' faces are often frozen in expressions of remorse or disbelief, as if they cannot truly comprehend the gravity of their actions. The more they are buried in the ice, the more it becomes clear that their punishment is one of spiritual paralysis, a loss of all warmth, compassion, and human connection. As they move on, Dante and Virgil enter the second zone of the ninth circle, where the traitors to their country are trapped. These souls are similarly encased in ice, but their positions are even more extreme, with some completely submerged, their faces and bodies buried deep within the frozen lake. The ice represents their treason against the very community that once trusted and relied on them. These individuals betrayed their own country, perhaps through espionage or collaboration with foreign powers. And in doing so, they caused irreparable harm to the social fabric of the nation. Dante comes across the soul of one such traitor, Bacca di Gliabadi, a historical figure known for his role in the betrayal of Florence during a critical time of political unrest. Bacca, who had once been a trusted figure in the city, turned on his own people for personal gain, leading to tragic consequences. When Dante speaks to him, Bacca reacts with an expression of shame and anger, realizing that the very betrayal he had committed had condemned him to eternal damnation. For Dante, this encounter serves as a reminder of the consequences of forsaking loyalty to one's country and community for personal power. As they move further into the frozen lake, it becomes increasingly clear that the pain of betrayal is not only about the loss of a personal relationship, but the fracturing of society itself. Next, they encounter the third zone of this infernal circle, where traitors to their guests are punished. These souls, like the others, are frozen in the icy lake, but their suffering is distinguished by the way they are positioned. Some are trapped face down, unable to see the world around them, while others are frozen with their heads bent backward, as if they are trying in vain to look up toward redemption or salvation. These are the people who have broken the sacred trust of hospitality, those who have betrayed the people who came to them for shelter, help, or refuge. The violation of this sacred trust is considered one of the most heinous sins in Dante's vision of hell. Hospitality, for Dante, was not just a social custom. It was a divine law, a reflection of the human duty to care for others. Those who, in a moment of greed, envy, or malice, turned on their guests are condemned to suffer the bitter cold for all eternity. In this section of hell, Dante is struck by the horror of how deeply the violation of such trust runs, creating an unbridgeable gap between human beings that leaves no room for compassion. In this part of hell, one senses the enormity of the harm done when one violates the most fundamental human decencies. Finally, Dante and Virgil arrive at the fourth zone of the ninth circle, where the worst of the worst are punished, those who have betrayed their benefactors. These are the souls of people who have turned on their masters, benefactors, or the individuals who have given them the greatest help. These are the ultimate traitors who, out of malice or self-interest, have repaid kindness with treachery. Here, the ice is at its most intense, and the souls are encased entirely, with only their faces visible, frozen in a grotesque state of agony. Among them is the infamous figure of Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Christ for 30 pieces of silver. He is in the very center of hell, frozen in the most severe position, eternally tormented by Satan himself, whose 3 heads perpetually chew on Judas, Brutus, and Cassius, the 2 Roman senators who betrayed Julius Caesar. The punishment of these ultimate traitors reflects the depth of their moral corruption. The ice that entraps them is not just physical. It is a representation of the absolute severing of any connection to love, loyalty, or mercy. These souls are frozen in time, their treachery so complete that there is no room left for the warmth of human affection or understanding. In Dante's vision, betrayal of those who have shown you grace is the deepest form of sin, a sin that cannot be undone, and that brings ultimate ruin to both the traitor and the betrayed. As Dante reflects on the depths of the ninth circle, he is filled with a profound sense of horror and revulsion. The icy cold of this circle seems to represent the chilling consequences of forsaking loyalty, honor, and love, the fundamental virtues that sustain both individual lives and society as a whole. Dante recognizes that betrayal is not just a personal offense. It is a sin that has the power to tear apart the very fabric of human existence, unraveling all trust and compassion. The souls he encounters in the ninth circle embody the consequences of that betrayal, trapped forever in a cold, unyielding eternity, their suffering a reminder of the devastating effects of treachery. Through these encounters, Dante's journey takes on a deeper significance as he begins to understand the true nature of sin and the profound impact it has on the soul. As he witnesses the suffering of those who have committed the worst acts of treachery, Dante is forced to reckon with the unrelenting consequences of betrayal and the irreversible harm it causes, not only to the person wronged, but to the very structure of society. The coldness that pervades this final circle serves as a stark reminder of the spiritual frost that sets in when one chooses self-interest and betrayal over loyalty, compassion, and truth. As Dante and Virgil move deeper into the ninth circle, the landscape becomes increasingly sinister, a visual embodiment of the moral decay and spiritual death that treachery causes. The frozen lake becomes more disturbing as the duo approaches the very center of hell, where Satan himself resides. The eternal torment of the betrayers reaches its ultimate climax in this final section of the Inferno. Here, the cold, oppressive atmosphere becomes suffocating, an unrelenting reflection of the soul's absolute disconnection from any warmth, from any sense of humanity or divine grace. The ninth circle is the most treacherous and terrifying part of hell, where Dante is forced to confront the consequences of betrayal, not just in abstract terms, but in the most personal and profound ways. The center of this frozen lake contains the souls of those who have betrayed their benefactors, those who have committed the ultimate treason. These are the worst of the worst, whose sin is so deep that it has fractured any remaining shred of divine love, leaving them eternally at odds with the very essence of human decency. As Dante progresses through this hellish realm, he is struck by the immensity of the suffering. The souls of the treacherous are frozen in an eternal, grotesque tableau. They are not simply trapped in ice, but contorted, twisted in agony, unable to escape the punishment they so richly deserve. Unlike those in the earlier circles who still possess a flicker of humanity, these souls are completely cut off from any form of redemption. Their very bodies are distorted by the cold, each frozen figure locked in a permanent state of pain. As if time itself has ceased for them, their fate sealed in eternity. Dante's heart grows heavy with every step as they move through the frozen lake, encountering the most infamous of the traitors, Judas Iscariot, the ultimate symbol of betrayal. Judas, who betrayed Christ, is frozen in the very center of hell, enduring the worst torment of all. His punishment is not just physical but metaphysical, as he is trapped in Satan's jaws, chewed eternally for his role in betraying the Son of God. The image of Judas, his body held within the infernal jaws of the devil, is one of utter horror. Not only does he suffer physically, but he also embodies the deepest possible sin, turning against the one who offered the ultimate form of love and sacrifice. Dante, filled with a mix of awe and revulsion, continues his journey with Virgil. As they approach the very heart of hell, they encounter the souls of Brutus and Cassius, the two Roman senators who betrayed Julius Caesar, leading to his assassination. These two figures represent a different kind of betrayal, political treason, but no less severe in Dante's eyes. For Dante, the act of turning on a benefactor, regardless of the personal or political motivations, is the most vile of all sins. The betrayal of Caesar, much like the betrayal of Christ, signals a break from both divine and human justice, a severance of the very foundation of moral order. The three figures, Judas, Brutus, and Cassius, are thus the central focus of this deepest part of hell. They are the ultimate embodiments of betrayal, their eternal punishment an undeniable reflection of the severity of their sins. The fact that Satan himself is chewing on them, their souls subjected to this eternal, horrific abuse, emphasizes the weight of their betrayal. These individual sins are not simply human transgressions. They are cosmic offenses that disrupt the balance of divine justice. Their betrayal transcends human understanding, and for that, their suffering is eternal. In this deepest part of hell, the ice is a suffocating, inescapable prison. The frozen lake represents the utter collapse of everything good and sacred: family, country, hospitality, and benefaction. Those trapped here are removed from the warmth of love, compassion, and redemption. They are frozen not only physically but spiritually, cut off from the very essence of human connection. This intense cold, a physical manifestation of their inner frost, represents the utter desolation and hopelessness that comes with betrayal. There is no warmth here, no light, no hope, only the hollow echo of actions that can never be undone. For Dante, this final descent into the center of hell is an opportunity for profound reflection. It forces him to examine not only the consequences of individual sin, but the broader moral fabric of society. Betrayal, whether of family, country, friends, or benefactors, tears at the very foundation of human trust and community. The unrelenting cold of this final circle reflects the deep fracture that betrayal causes, an emotional and spiritual coldness that cannot be thawed. The very nature of these sins is such that even the concept of repentance seems almost impossible. The damage is done, and it is irreversible. As Virgil and Dante make their way back from the frozen lake, the weight of what they have witnessed settles upon Dante. He has seen the worst of humanity, those whose actions were so vile, so deeply destructive, that they have been sentenced to an eternity of suffering. His journey through the Inferno has revealed the consequences of sin in its most extreme form. It has shown him the devastation that betrayal can wreak, not only on individuals, but on the greater social and divine order. As they depart the frozen lake, the sight of the three traitors being eternally tormented by Satan serves as a reminder of the ultimate consequences of turning away from love and loyalty. Their frozen torment is a reflection of the unbridgeable gap between them and the divine, an insurmountable chasm that they will never be able to cross. For Dante, the lesson is clear. Betrayal is a sin that shatters the very core of human society, undermining the relationships that form the foundation of the world. The souls trapped in this frozen abyss have committed the gravest offenses, and their punishment is as harsh as their sin. They have broken the sacred trust that binds all of humanity, and for that, they endure the most agonizing and unrelenting punishment imaginable. As Dante and Virgil continue their journey, the suffering they have witnessed lingers in Dante's mind. He is struck not only by the horror of what he has seen, but by the profound moral lessons that the Inferno has offered. In this deepest part of hell, he has come face to face with the ultimate consequences of betrayal, an eternal, inescapable torment that serves as a stark warning for all who may contemplate similar actions. The frozen lake of the ninth circle stands as a chilling testament to the destructive power of sin and the utter hopelessness that accompanies those who forsake love, loyalty, and compassion. The image of the three traitors, the figures of Judas, Brutus, and Cassius, continues to haunt Dante as he reflects on the profound consequences of their actions. Their punishment serves as the final and most severe warning to all who might follow in their footsteps. The betrayal of trust, whether in matters of family, country, or love, brings with it the greatest of all tragedies. It is a sin that cannot be undone, and the consequences are as cold and unforgiving as the frozen lake in which the traitors are trapped. As Dante and Virgil ascend from the frozen lake of the ninth circle, they begin to leave behind the eternal torment of the treacherous and move into a realm where they can almost sense the shift between the suffering of hell and the hope that will come in purgatory. Their journey has been long and harrowing, but as they continue, Dante's understanding of sin, redemption, and divine justice begins to mature. The horrors of the frozen lake, where Judas and the other great traitors of history are eternally consumed by Satan, have left an indelible mark on Dante's soul. Yet, this descent through hell has also paved the way for a new comprehension of human nature, sin, and the consequences of turning away from divine love. The final leg of their journey through hell brings them to the very edge of the Inferno, where the last remnants of human suffering can be seen. As the two travelers begin to leave the underworld behind, there is a sense of closure, not just for their journey, but also for Dante's internal transformation. Although hell has been a place of unimaginable suffering, it has also been a space where he has come to understand the intricacies of divine justice. He has witnessed the result of sin on both an individual and societal scale, and the importance of repentance and moral clarity has been drilled into him throughout his journey. Yet, as he leaves behind the darkness of hell and prepares to ascend toward purgatory, he is left to confront the full weight of these revelations. Their journey reaches a point where Dante's gaze begins to move beyond the immediate suffering of the damned. His attention shifts to the broader implications of the divine justice he has witnessed, how sin, in all its forms, affects not just the sinner, but the entire fabric of creation. The Inferno, though an overwhelming vision of despair, is also a mirror, reflecting humanity's own choices and its moral consequences. Through this reflection, Dante has learned that sin doesn't exist in isolation. It spreads, corrupts, and leaves a trail of destruction behind it. This profound realization begins to take root within him as he nears the end of his time in hell. Virgil, ever the guide and teacher, continues to provide context and understanding. But now their conversation shifts from the mechanics of hell to the greater questions about the nature of sin itself. With each passing circle of hell, Dante has been forced to confront more than just the horrific punishments. He has also come to understand the role of free will in human actions. The souls trapped in hell are there not merely because they were unfortunate or fated to be punished, but because they made choices that led them to these extreme consequences. It is a powerful commentary on the importance of human agency and responsibility. Each soul, whether in the Inferno's deepest depths or the more mildly tormented circles, is there because of a choice they made, an act they committed that severed their relationship with God. As Dante steps away from the frozen lake, he sees the contours of the final pit in hell, where Lucifer himself resides, locked in eternal torment. The devil is not the sole ruler of hell. He is a prisoner, chained by the very sin he represents, an embodiment of the self-destructive nature of evil. This last image, where Satan is encased in ice and devouring the greatest of traitors, is a powerful final statement on the nature of evil itself. It reflects how evil, no matter how powerful it may seem, always carries within it a fatal flaw. It consumes and devours, but it ultimately destroys itself. This vision of Satan, unable to escape his own nature, is a stark contrast to the idea of divine justice, which is ever just, balanced, and unyielding. In this way, the conclusion of their journey through hell becomes a meditation on the idea of balance in divine justice. Dante begins to grasp that hell, while a place of immense suffering is also a space of ultimate fairness. It is a system that is designed to make clear the relationship between sin and its consequences. Each circle, each punishment, is a perfect reflection of the sin it punishes. Even the most horrific tortures are a natural result of the choices that these souls made during their lives. Hell, in its cruel efficiency, reveals the moral order of the universe in its rawest, most brutal form. As they prepare to leave hell and begin their ascent to purgatory, Dante experiences a moment of profound realization. He sees the Inferno not just as a place of retribution, but as an essential element of divine justice. Without the Inferno, there would be no understanding of redemption, no meaningful contrast to the grace and mercy of God. Hell, in its suffering, is a necessary counterpart to salvation. It highlights the importance of moral choices, of living a life that seeks divine grace, and of recognizing the spiritual consequences of human actions. While the souls in hell may never escape their eternal torment, their suffering serves as a warning, an everlasting testament to the importance of living a life that aligns with divine will. The final part of their journey through hell concludes with an overwhelming sense of both horror and awe. Dante has seen the consequences of sin in its purest, most concentrated form. He has witnessed the destruction of human souls, the disintegration of spiritual lives, and the breakdown of all that is good in the world. But he has also seen that this suffering is not random or unjust. The souls of hell are there because of their choices, and their punishment is not arbitrary, but reflective of their actions. The divine justice that presides over hell is fair, even if it is impossible to fathom from a human perspective. As Virgil and Dante step out of the Inferno and into the waiting embrace of the stars above, there is a sense that this journey, with all its trials and tribulations, has not been for nothing. Dante has undergone a transformation, not just physically, but spiritually. He has gained new insights into the human condition, into the nature of sin and its consequences, and into the immense power of divine justice. This newfound understanding will serve him well as he moves toward the next stage of his journey, Purgatory, and ultimately Paradise. The lessons learned in hell will guide him toward redemption, and the memories of the souls he encountered will continue to haunt him, ensuring that he never forgets the importance of moral choices, spiritual integrity, and divine grace. In the end, Dante's journey through hell, though terrifying and filled with suffering, is not a journey into despair. It is a path toward awakening, a realization that, despite the darkness of sin, there is always the potential for redemption, for grace, and for the ultimate triumph of divine justice. Dante and Virgil now find themselves at the threshold of Purgatory, transitioning from the harrowing experiences of hell to a realm of hope, renewal, and divine forgiveness. The journey through hell has been a descent into the darkest depths of human suffering and sin. But now, as they approach the mountain of Purgatory, there is a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The air is fresher, the sounds gentler, and the light brighter. The mountain itself stands as a symbol of spiritual ascent, contrasting sharply with the oppressive, suffocating environment of the Inferno. This new realm offers a glimmer of salvation and redemption, a space where the souls of the repentant are given the opportunity to cleanse themselves and work their way toward God's grace. The mountain of Purgatory, unlike the circles of hell, is not a place of eternal damnation, but a temporary space where souls undergo purification. It is here that Dante encounters the first souls who are striving for salvation. These souls are not punished eternally, but instead, they are in a process of transformation. Their suffering is not without hope, and their ultimate goal is not torment, but redemption. The physical and spiritual landscapes of Purgatory are marked by this very distinction. The souls in Purgatory are in a state of transition, actively working toward their salvation, rather than resigned to the hopelessness of eternal damnation. Dante's first encounter with the souls in Purgatory is strikingly different from the suffering souls he witnessed in hell. Here, the souls are not frozen in despair or locked in eternal torment, but are engaged in active penitence. As Dante and Virgil ascend the mountain, they see souls who are joyful in their efforts, hopeful in their pursuit of spiritual purity. These souls do not simply face eternal punishment, but are striving to purify themselves so that they may eventually ascend to heaven. There is a sense of movement here, of progress, a stark contrast to the stagnant, frozen despair of hell. The souls in purgatory are not passive victims, but active participants in their spiritual renewal, which marks the first important distinction between this realm and the Inferno. As Dante continues to ascend the mountain, he encounters various groups of souls, each group representative of a particular sin or flaw that they are in the process of overcoming. These souls are not merely punished, but their suffering is a form of discipline, a means by which they work through the burdens of their past lives. Each group of souls in purgatory is engaged in a different form of penance, based on the specific sin they committed during their lives on earth. The varying degrees of suffering correspond to the gravity of their sins, but even in their suffering, there is hope. The ultimate goal of these souls is to purify themselves completely and prepare to enter heaven, an aspiration that makes their journey in purgatory fundamentally different from the souls in hell, who are trapped in eternal torment with no hope of redemption. The physical environment of purgatory itself plays a vital role in this transformation. The mountain is not just a space of punishment, but a landscape of spiritual development. As Dante and Virgil ascend higher, they see that the mountain is divided into different terraces, each representing a particular sin that is being purged. These terraces are not static. They are places of movement and change, reflecting the dynamic process of purification. Each terrace has its own form of penance, and as Dante and Virgil move through these areas, they witness the soul's efforts to atone for their past transgressions. The souls here are not passively enduring their punishment, but actively participating in their own redemption. As they ascend further, Dante becomes increasingly aware of the importance of human agency in the process of repentance and salvation. While the souls in hell are punished for their sins without the possibility of redemption, those in purgatory are given the opportunity to transform and purify themselves. This journey through purgatory emphasizes the importance of personal responsibility and the possibility of redemption through repentance. It is a powerful commentary on the nature of human choices and the role of free will in the pursuit of salvation. Unlike the souls in hell, who are imprisoned by their choices, the souls in purgatory are free to change, to repent, and to ultimately move closer to God. One of the central themes that Dante explores in Purgatory is the nature of sin and its consequences. Unlike hell, where the punishment is final and unyielding, Purgatory is a space where the consequences of sin can be undone, where the sinner can turn back to God and seek forgiveness. The souls in Purgatory are not defined by their sins, but by their desire to atone for them. This theme of repentance and redemption is a cornerstone of Dante's vision of the afterlife. The journey through purgatory is not just a physical ascent, but a spiritual one, where Dante is confronted with the possibility of redemption for all souls who sincerely repent. Throughout their journey in purgatory, Virgil continues to guide Dante. offering wisdom and context to the souls they encounter. Virgil's role as a guide becomes increasingly important in this realm, where the themes of transformation and redemption are at the forefront. It is here that Dante learns the true nature of repentance, not just as a means of punishment, but as a process of spiritual growth and renewal. Virgil explains that the suffering of the souls in purgatory is a necessary part of their journey, a purifying fire that will ultimately lead them to the light of God's grace. This idea of suffering as a transformative force is a powerful contrast to the eternal suffering of the souls in hell, where the punishment is static and unchanging. In purgatory, the suffering is active and purifying, leading to eventual redemption. The overall tone of purgatory is one of hope and possibility. While the souls in hell are trapped in their despair, the souls in purgatory are given the opportunity to rise above their past mistakes and to transform themselves. Their journey is not easy, but it is one filled with the promise of salvation. As Dante ascends the mountain, he is reminded of the potential for change, of the possibility that no soul is beyond redemption. This idea of redemption through repentance is central to the Christian worldview, and Dante's portrayal of purgatory emphasizes the importance of mercy, grace, and the power of divine love to heal even the most damaged souls. Ultimately, as Dante and Virgil continue their ascent, they move further into a realm where suffering is not an end in itself, but a means of transformation. The souls of purgatory are not condemned to eternal suffering, but are engaged in a process of purification that will ultimately bring them closer to God. This shift from the unyielding despair of hell to the transformative suffering of purgatory marks a turning point in Dante's journey. It is a reminder that no matter how great the sin, there is always the possibility of redemption, and that even in the darkest moments, there is hope for spiritual renewal. As Dante and Virgil continue their ascent through the terraces of purgatory, the journey begins to take on new dimensions. The themes of repentance, grace, and spiritual purification deepen, and Dante is given the chance to witness firsthand the transformative power of penance. Each terrace they pass represents a different sin that the souls are working to cleanse, and with every new encounter, Dante learns more about the intricate relationship between sin, redemption, and the divine order. The first terrace they encounter is the terrace of the proud. Here, the souls who were proud in life must carry immense, heavy stones on their backs. This burden is a physical manifestation of the weight of their arrogance. The punishment is not merely about suffering, but rather a symbolic act of humbling, an attempt to teach the souls the value of humility. As Dante witnesses their penitence, he begins to understand that the process of purification is not about inflicting pain for its own sake, but about creating a necessary space for transformation. The proud souls, who once believed they were superior to others, must now experience the very thing they lacked, humility. This moment serves as an important lesson for Dante, as he is forced to reckon with his own understanding of pride and the ways in which it may have manifested in his own life. As they move through the terraces, Virgil explains that each sin has its own corresponding virtue, and this is why each group of souls is given a specific form of penance. The proud souls must bear their weight, just as the envious souls will later suffer from a lack of sight. symbolizing their inability to see beyond their own desires and jealousy. The penitence for each sin is intricately designed to force the soul to confront the very nature of its wrongdoing and to actively work to rectify it. This relationship between sin and virtue is a cornerstone of Dante's theology, highlighting the idea that to overcome sin, one must embrace its opposite, the virtue that can counterbalance the spiritual distortion caused by transgression. As Dante and Virgil climb higher, they begin to see the souls of the envious. These souls are blinded by the very envy that dominated their lives on earth. Their eyes are sewn shut, and they must walk in a darkened world, unable to see the joy and fulfillment of others. The punishment for the envious is particularly striking, as it forces them to confront the deep emptiness that their jealousy created in their hearts. By not being able to witness the happiness of others, they are forced to reflect on the destructive power of envy, which robs them of the ability to appreciate the joy and well-being of others. This moment is particularly poignant for Dante, as it pushes him to examine the ways in which envy may have infiltrated his own life and relationships. He recognizes that envy often stems from a deep sense of insecurity, a yearning for something that is perceived to be lacking within oneself. In witnessing the envious soul's suffering, Dante begins to grasp the power of contentment and the peace that comes from embracing the success and happiness of others, rather than resenting them. The further Dante and Virgil ascend, the more they encounter souls who are working through their sins with sincere humility and a deep desire for spiritual renewal. This part of the journey becomes increasingly reflective as Dante contemplates not only the nature of sin and its consequences, but also the way in which he too can transform and purify himself. His interactions with the souls in purgatory are far less passive than they were in hell. In hell, Dante was largely an observer, powerless to change the fate of those he encountered. But in purgatory, Dante is a witness to the active work of salvation. The souls are not resigned to their fate. They are striving, struggling, and in many cases, finding hope. Among the souls of the envious, Dante encounters a particularly poignant figure, his old mentor, the poet Guido Ginizelli, a man Dante greatly admired in life. Guido explains that his envy was born out of his intense desire for recognition and glory. He reveals to Dante that, although he was a great poet, his fame came at the expense of his relationships with others. He allowed his envy of those who succeeded him to blind him to the joy that should have come from sharing his work with others. Dante listens intently, reflecting on how his own ambitions may have led to feelings of envy or resentment in his own life. He feels a deep sense of empathy for Guido, understanding how envy can distort one's perception of the world and cause irreparable harm. As Dante continues his journey through purgatory, he encounters more souls who are working through their sins with sincerity and diligence. Each interaction with these souls deepens Dante's understanding of repentance and the complex nature of human suffering. He realizes that the road to salvation is not an easy one, but it is a path that requires effort, humility, and a willingness to confront the flaws within oneself. By now, Dante has come to appreciate the significance of purgatory as a place of transformation, rather than merely a realm of punishment. The souls here are not beyond redemption. They are actively engaged in the work of becoming more whole, more complete, and more aligned with God's will. The idea of purgatory as a place of hope and opportunity for renewal is profoundly different from the hopelessness of hell, where the souls are trapped in their sins for eternity without the possibility of change. Dante's spiritual journey in purgatory becomes more personal as he contemplates his own flaws and shortcomings. He is not merely observing the transformation of others, but is beginning to recognize the ways in which he, too, must change. His encounters with the souls in purgatory offer him the opportunity to examine the nature of his own sins and flaws, and the process of purification becomes a mirror for his own spiritual journey. Just as the souls in purgatory are striving for redemption, so too must Dante strive for personal and spiritual growth. This period in purgatory is one of profound self-examination for Dante. It marks a turning point in his journey as he moves from a place of passive observation to one of active participation in his own purification. The souls in purgatory are not just figures of suffering, but agents of transformation, each one representing a step along the path to salvation. Dante, too, must take these steps if he is to ascend the mountain and ultimately reach the divine light of heaven. As Dante and Virgil continue their ascent through purgatory, the atmosphere shifts further, revealing a profound progression in Dante's spiritual journey. They now approach the final terraces, where the sins of the soul's journey in the physical world have been brought to the forefront and can finally be purified. The souls they encounter here are closer to attaining the salvation they have longed for, and the atmosphere is filled with anticipation. They are almost at the summit, a place where the purest of souls will be reunited with divine grace. The terrace they reach now is the one reserved for the avaricious or the greedy. Dante's heart is moved as he observes the punishment here. The greedy souls, those who hoarded wealth in life, are now bound by the weight of their material possessions. The penalty is particularly significant because it forces them to face the emptiness of their former desires. They are all forced to crawl, dragging heavy bags of coins behind them, while their faces are often buried in the dirt. The very things they once held in high regard, their wealth and material possessions, have now become their burdens. As Dante looks upon them, he recognizes a deep irony in their suffering. These souls spent their lives pursuing something that, in the end, could not save them. Rather, it has become the very thing that prevents them from reaching the divine light. Virgil takes this moment to offer a lesson to Dante, explaining that the nature of greed is one of the most insidious of sins. The desire for material wealth clouds the mind, shifting one's priorities to transient objects rather than to eternal truths. It is not simply about hoarding wealth. It is about placing one's trust and hope in something that is fundamentally impermanent and illusory. The souls here must come to terms with the fact that the pursuit of riches and material security ultimately leads to a dead end, a false sense of fulfillment. The wealth they once coveted is now a weight they must carry with them as they crawl on the dusty floor, symbolizing how their attachment to worldly goods bound them to a limited, finite existence. Dante, for his part, experiences a deep moment of reflection. He thinks back to his own life, wondering whether his pursuit of personal fame, his political ambitions, and his own desires for recognition have been forms of greed. Though they may not have been in the material sense, they were certainly driven by a desire to secure his place in the world. He realizes that even something as seemingly benign as ambition, when driven by excessive attachment to the ego and the desire for personal gain, can be a form of greed. This realization begins to transform Dante's understanding of sin, making him aware of the subtle ways in which human desires, even those that appear noble on the surface, can be distorted when detached from spiritual principles. As they continue their journey, Dante and Virgil encounter another terrace where the wrathful are being purified. The souls of the wrathful are those who allowed their anger to govern their actions in life, either through violence or through an uncontrolled rage that led them to harm others. These souls are engulfed in flames, their faces contorted in torment, reflecting the consuming nature of anger that dominated their existence on earth. The fire that surrounds them is a powerful image, representing the intense heat of the wrath they once unleashed upon others. In life, they burned with rage, and now they are burned by the very fire they once created, forced to recognize the damage their fury caused. The punishment for the wrathful is particularly striking because it is not just a form of external torment, but a reflection of the inner turmoil that defined their existence. The flames that surround them burn not only their skin, but also their hearts, which were once consumed by hatred and anger. Virgil explains to Dante that in order to cleanse the soul of anger, one must be forced to confront the flame that once burned within. The punishment here is not simply about inflicting pain, but about forcing the soul to acknowledge the destructive power of wrath and to seek the peace that can only come from forgiveness and reconciliation. As Dante watches the souls of the wrathful, he becomes deeply introspective, reflecting on the ways in which anger has shaped his own life. He acknowledges that there have been times when he, too, allowed his passions to consume him, particularly in moments of political strife, betrayal, and personal conflict. He remembers the resentment he held toward his enemies, the deep sense of injustice that fueled his bitterness. As he observes the souls in the fire, he begins to recognize that true peace can only be found when one is able to let go of the grip that anger has on the heart. Forgiveness, he realizes, is the only way to truly free oneself from the burning rage that so often defines human experience. As they climb higher, the landscape begins to change, becoming more serene and peaceful. The terraces of Purgatory become less harsh in their punishments as the souls near the end of their journey. The souls who have reached these final terraces are preparing for their ultimate union with the divine. Their bodies and spirits are purified, and they will soon be ready to ascend to heaven, where the final, eternal reward will await them. The atmosphere is no longer one of suffering, but of hopeful anticipation. The souls, though still working to purify themselves, are now filled with a sense of peace, knowing that their journey is almost at an end. Virgil and Dante now approach the final moments of their journey through Purgatory. The last terraces stand as symbols of the ultimate spiritual purification. Dante, having witnessed the suffering and redemption of so many souls, now understands the true nature of grace. He recognizes that this journey through Purgatory is not just about punishment, but about transformation, and that the souls who suffer here are engaged in a process of spiritual renewal. as he looks at the souls who are so close to their salvation. He is filled with hope and understanding, knowing that their suffering has not been in vain, but has been a necessary part of their path toward redemption. Through the course of his journey, Dante has not only observed the penitence of others, but he has also been slowly, and often painfully, confronting his own flaws. The purgatory he has witnessed is not just a realm for others to be purified. It is also a reflection of his own internal process of self-examination and transformation. The very journey through these terraces is one of his own purification, as he is forced to confront his sins and his understanding of virtue, grace, and redemption. The journey that began with a descent into hell has now brought him to the cusp of heaven, and he is about to experience a final and even more transformative encounter with the divine light that awaits him at the summit. As Dante and Virgil reach the final ascent toward the summit of Mount Purgatory, they encounter a remarkable transformation. This final stage of the journey is a culmination of everything Dante has experienced and learned thus far. The physical landscape around them shifts, becoming more luminous and serene as the climb nears its conclusion. At the top, the souls who have undergone the purifying process of purgatory are now ready to enter heaven, having been cleansed of their sins. Dante's own soul, too, has undergone a process of profound change. The journey has not only been one of witnessing divine justice, but has also been deeply personal, shaping him spiritually and intellectually. The final moments in purgatory, as he nears the threshold of heaven, carry an air of reverence, anticipation, and triumph. As they ascend toward the last terrace, the vision before them shifts, and the very nature of the mountain seems to glow with an otherworldly radiance. Dante is struck by the beauty and peace of the place, which seems to emanate an energy unlike anything he has encountered so far. The souls who have been purified here are preparing for the final step of their journey, where they will experience the fullness of God's grace. The atmosphere is light, filled with an aura of tranquility that contrasts sharply with the suffering and toil Dante witnessed at the beginning of his journey. Virgil, ever the guide, points out that this is the final stage of the penitential process. The souls who have reached this point are prepared to ascend to heaven, having atoned for the sins they committed during their earthly lives. They have gone through the pain of self-reflection, humility, and the acknowledgement of their wrongdoings, and they are now prepared to receive the divine light that will elevate them into the presence of God. Virgil, whose role as a guide has been to lead Dante through hell and purgatory, knows that his journey with Dante is now nearing its end. He will soon have to part ways with the pilgrim as the latter reaches the ultimate stage of his spiritual journey. Dante, with Virgil's guidance, approaches the final part of his path, a place of cleansing and ultimate redemption. He looks around and sees the souls in a state of peaceful preparation, ready to take the final steps toward the divine. The mood is both reverent and joyful, as the souls eagerly await the moment when they will finally leave the purgatorial realm behind and be united with God in heaven. Dante, overwhelmed by the beauty and purity of the scene, begins to grasp the full weight of what this journey represents, not just for the souls around him, but for himself as well. In this moment, he fully understands that this journey was never only about observing the purification of others, but about the purification of his own soul. Virgil, having served as the guide through the lower realms, now prepares to leave Dante. This marks an emotional turning point in Dante's journey. Virgil, the wise and learned guide, is unable to ascend beyond the realm of purgatory. His wisdom, though invaluable, is not sufficient to lead Dante into heaven. In a deeply moving moment of farewell, Virgil tells Dante that he must continue the journey alone, for only divine guidance can lead him the rest of the way. He emphasizes that Dante must now rely on his own faith and understanding as he enters the final stage of his spiritual awakening. Dante, though grateful for Virgil's guidance, experiences a profound sense of loss as he watches his guide fade into the distance, symbolizing the transition from earthly wisdom to divine revelation. In Virgil's absence, Dante is approached by Beatrice, the woman he has long admired and loved from afar. Beatrice, representing divine love and wisdom, has been sent to guide Dante through the final stages of his journey. Her arrival signifies a new chapter in Dante's transformation, one that is no longer guided by human reason, but by divine grace. The relationship between Dante and Beatrice is symbolic of the spiritual ascent that Dante has made. She leads him through the final stages of purgatory and toward heaven, a process that is as much about spiritual awakening as it is about the redemptive power of love. Beatrice's appearance marks the beginning of a deeper spiritual understanding for Dante. He is no longer the same person who descended into hell at the start of his journey. His heart has been opened, and his understanding of the divine has evolved. Beatrice's beauty is radiant, not just in a physical sense, but in the way her presence embodies divine wisdom and grace. As she speaks to him, Dante is filled with awe and reverence, recognizing the purity and the divine love that she represents. She tells him that the final stage of his journey is one of pure divine illumination, where he will experience the love of God in its fullest sense. With Beatrice as his guide, Dante ascends into heaven, experiencing a profound spiritual awakening. As they rise through the spheres of heaven, Dante witnesses the souls of the blessed, each one basking in the light of God's love. The higher they ascend, the more intense the light becomes, until it reaches a point where the brilliance of God's presence is overwhelming. Dante, still mortal, is unable to fully comprehend the depth of the divine light he encounters, but he is filled with a sense of peace and awe as he moves closer to the ultimate divine truth. At the pinnacle of his journey, Dante experiences the beatific vision, the direct experience of God's divine presence. This moment, the culmination of Dante's journey, represents the ultimate union between the soul and God. Dante's journey, which began with a descent into hell, has come full circle, leading him to a direct encounter with the divine light. It is here, in the presence of God, that Dante finds the ultimate fulfillment of his spiritual quest. The final vision is one of indescribable beauty, where Dante, overwhelmed by the brilliance of God's love, is both humbled and exalted. The vision of divine unity reveals the interconnectedness of all things, showing how the individual soul, when aligned with God's will, can experience a profound sense of unity with the universe. Dante's journey, from the darkness of hell to the light of heaven, is a testament to the transformative power of divine grace. The experience of God's love, while transcendent and beyond human understanding, also brings a deep sense of peace, completion, and fulfillment. As Dante's journey comes to an end, he returns to his mortal life, forever changed. He has not only witnessed the spiritual transformation of others, but has undergone his own purification. The Divine Comedy, as a whole, is a journey of redemption, not just for the souls in hell, purgatory, and heaven, but for Dante himself. The work, filled with theological and philosophical depth, serves as both a spiritual guide and a reflection on the human condition. Through Dante's journey, the reader is reminded that the path to salvation is long and difficult, but ultimately, it is a path of love, faith, and divine grace. Dante Alighieri's The Divine Comedy is not merely a journey through the afterlife. It is a profound spiritual, philosophical, and poetic voyage into the very heart of the human condition. Across its sweeping three-part structure, Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso, Dante constructs a vision of the cosmos that reflects not only medieval theology and politics, but also the deeply personal longing for moral clarity, redemption, and divine truth. What begins as a narrative of a lost soul wandering in a dark wood becomes, by the end, a triumphant ascent to eternal light. It is both a cautionary tale and a hopeful promise, a record of what becomes of the soul when it is left unchecked, and what it can achieve when guided by virtue, wisdom, and love. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Divine Comedy is how it unites the universal with the intensely personal. Dante, the pilgrim, is not simply a fictional figure. He is Dante, the poet himself, grappling with his failures, his exile, his love, and his purpose. This personal vulnerability, woven through encounters with the damned, the penitent, and the blessed, gives the epic its emotional resonance. Through each step in hell's despair, each climb in purgatory's hope, and each flight in heaven's joy, we witness a soul moving closer to truth, not just the theological truth of God's justice and grace, but the inner truth of a man learning what it means to be righteous. The journey through hell is brutal and unforgettable. The vivid punishments reflect Dante's belief in contrapasso, the idea that the punishment mirrors the sin, and it shows us the consequences of a life unrepentantly detached from virtue. But it's not all fire and torment. It's a deep meditation on the nature of sin itself. Dante does not simply condemn, he observes, he listens, and he learns. Each sinner he encounters offers a warning, a mirror, and sometimes a spark of tragic humanity. Purgatory, by contrast, is a place of healing and longing. The souls here are still stained by sin, but they have the will to be cleansed. They climb with purpose, each terrace an act of purification that moves them closer to God. This part of the journey reveals the importance of humility, repentance, and inner work. It is slower, more reflective, filled with hymns and prayers, showing that salvation is not instant, but the result of persistent, grace-filled effort. Then comes Paradise, the most abstract and metaphysical section of the journey. It is a challenge to describe, as Dante himself acknowledges, for how can a mortal poet put divine ecstasy into words? And yet, he succeeds. Through careful structure, dazzling imagery, and the symbolic guidance of Beatrice, Dante explores the celestial spheres, each representing different virtues and states of blessedness. This is not merely a description of the Christian heaven. It's a philosophical ascent into the very nature of being, knowledge, and love. Central to it all is love, divine love, romantic love, the love that moves the sun and the other stars. Beatrice is more than just a guide. She is the embodiment of divine inspiration and the transformative power of idealized love. Her presence elevates Dante from the temporal to the eternal, from reason to revelation. And in the final, overwhelming vision of God, Dante experiences a love so complete, so consuming, that it dissolves all boundaries of the self and fuses him with the eternal will. What makes the Divine Comedy endure through centuries is not only its spiritual insight or its imaginative scope, but also its unmatched literary craftsmanship. Dante composed the entire work in terza rima, an intricate rhyming pattern that gives the poem both elegance and forward momentum. His use of language is precise, rich, and emotionally potent. He draws from classical literature, theology, history, and his own life, weaving them into a tapestry that is as much a record of his world as it is a transcendent moral map for all time. And yet, for all its theological framework, the Divine Comedy is not bound by dogma. It is a deeply human work. It questions. It reflects. It allows room for ambiguity and complexity. It shows mercy where we might expect condemnation and dignity where we might expect scorn. Dante's own doubts, fears, and emotional struggles are laid bare, and it is through these that the reader connects most intimately with the journey. This is why, even centuries later, the poem remains so relevant. It speaks to anyone who has ever felt lost, anyone who has sought meaning in suffering, anyone who has longed for a glimpse of redemption. In many ways, the comedy is a mirror. We see ourselves in the souls Dante encounters, in their pride, their grief, their rage, their longing. We are reminded of our own moral choices, our own inner darkness, and our own capacity for transformation. Dante insists that the road to salvation is open to all, but it requires us to see clearly, to love deeply, and to walk with courage. As the final lines of the poem rise to a crescendo, when Dante beholds the eternal light and understands, through divine grace, the harmony of the universe, he ends not with certainty, but with awe. The love that moves the sun and the other stars is not something he conquers or defines. It is something he surrenders to. And that is perhaps the most profound lesson of all, that in the face of ultimate truth, we must be humble, open, and willing to be transformed. The Divine Comedy remains a towering achievement in world literature, a guidebook for the soul, and a bridge between the medieval and the modern. It is a poem about death that teaches us how to live. It reminds us that no matter how deep the darkness, the light is always there, waiting at the end of the journey.